So, Jonathan, my first question is about your beginning as an entrepreneur in '98 when you started Abcam. How did you get the idea of starting an online business and a biotech business at the same time?
Well, I suppose what I've got to do is go back to a previous self of mine, which was pre-businessman, pre-entrepreneur, pre-investor, and my background is biology. So I was doing a couple of postdocs, and I ended up doing a postdoc in Cambridge University, and it was during doing breast cancer research. And it was during my breast cancer research that I had problems finding the right antibodies for my research. And this sounds crazy, but this was, you've got to remember, I tell my kids this, who are all teenagers now, but back in those days there was very little in the way of ordering online or websites or anything like that. But I discovered that I could order books through this website that no one else had heard of, called Amazon. And I just thought this was the best thing ever. And I suddenly had this sort of what I would call an entrepreneurial seizure, where I thought, hang on a minute, if you can order books, why can't you order antibodies online? And that would have been the end of it. So bear in mind, I'm a scientist, I'm an academic, I know nothing about business whatsoever. That would really have been the end of the story. But a little bit of luck and serendipity came into it, in that I was invited to a Christmas dinner, and it was a colleague of my wife's, who she was working in an art gallery, and she was married to an entrepreneur himself. And I was sat next to this entrepreneur at this Christmas dinner, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm at the end of this postdoc, but I've got this idea for a business." And so he said to me, "Well, come and talk to me about it." So I turned up at his office, and we sketched out this plan, and he said, "Well, this is interesting." He said, "The future is ordering things online." He said, I failed. This is a chap called David Cleveley, who's he was in telecoms, believe it or not. And he said, "I really want to get into the biotech world because I failed my biology O-level." So he really was desperate to get in. So I said, "Okay, we'll start, let's start the business together." So he said to me, "Have you got any money?" And I laughed at him, and I said, "Don't be silly, of course I haven't got any money." And he said, "Well, if you haven't got any money, I'm not going to put any money into the company." So he said, "Come back in a week's time with some money." Okay, no kidding. This is exactly what happened. So I went away, and I thought, well, where do I get money from? In those days, this is the crazy thing. We just bought a house. You could buy houses back in those days, even on meager academic salaries. But we were mortgaged up to the hilt, but the banks were throwing money at people. And so I wrote off to remortgage the house, pretending that we were going to put in a new kitchen and a new bathroom. And literally, I kid you not, in 2 days, this cheque arrived for £11,000. So the next Saturday morning, I danced into David's office going, "I've got the money, I've got £11,000. And David took one look at this cheque, and he just said, "It's not enough." So I said, "Well, that's all I've got." So he said, "Okay, I'll put in £40,000 for your £11,000, and we'll get the company capitalised and started." So that's essentially how we got the company started.
Yeah, that's a nice story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think you spent some time with Abcam, but what was the most important lesson in the early days, like when you started the company?
I mean, there's probably many of you here who are entrepreneurs and you're starting your own company, and there are so many lessons.
Sure.
You know, but I think the one that I found helped me the most was actually just having the resilience to keep going, to not give up. And that was probably the hardest thing of all, because there were so many times when we were running out of money. I almost lost the company. There were really, really, really dark days.
Mm-hmm.
And I expect many of you here would appreciate, you know, being entrepreneurs, how bad and how low things can get. Yeah. But always having that sort of resilience of saying, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to keep going, and getting through, even when, you know, the money is running out, and things are really desperate.
Mm. And it went well. Now I think Abcam is worth over £2 billion, right?
It's varies between 2 and 3 billion, but so it's gone very well.
Very impressive.
Yeah. But one thing, I mean, I would say on the resilience front is that when things were very black and we were down to 2 weeks worth of money and we were basically going to go bankrupt, had no money whatsoever, spent everything, and I was absolutely desperate. And I did something, because out of desperation, which put me out of my comfort zone, but it was probably the best thing I ever could have done. And that is that I had these products in this little tiny lab, it was the size of a cupboard, these antibody products in an ice bucket. And we weren't selling any. The website was getting plenty of hits, but these antibodies just weren't selling. So I took these antibodies on the back of my bike in an ice bucket, and I went round all of the university departments, and I knocked on the door, and I was just pleading with people in the labs, will you buy these antibodies? And it was at first it was disheartening, because they'd look in the ice bucket and they'd go, well, we don't need that antibody, don't need an antibody to P53, don't need an antibody HRP conjugate. But, and this is the interesting bit, and this is why I was so glad I did it, they said, but you could make me an antibody. And so I said, okay, I can make you an antibody. So I'd take an order for the antibody to be made, and then we'd make a custom antibody. And the custom antibody service at the university was hopeless. So I found that I could do it much better. And that actually got us through the cash flow. So the reason that Abcam survived is because we were taking these orders for custom antibodies. But immediately we could stop that. We stopped the custom antibody. But I think the lesson that I learned there was go and visit your customer, get to know your customer, get to know what they want is really important.
Yeah. So yeah, we will not go in more into details on your career at Abcam, but I want to explore more how you became a business angel, and how did this happen basically? Like, when did you decided, okay, now I'm gonna be an investor?
The honest answer to that is I sort of accidentally fell into it, because being in Cambridge, I'd met a number of life science investors, and actually they weren't life science investors, they were more tech investors than anything. And they invited me along to this thing called Cambridge Angels. So I went along to that, and David, again, bless him, he's been my mentor, and without David Cleveley, the business would never have got off the ground. And we were at one of these events. This is early 2000s. I didn't have any money then. And he just turned around to me and he said, Jonathan, he said, don't you think this is the most exciting thing you could possibly do in the world? And I sort of looked at him, and I thought about it. And then I went, do you know what, David? You're right. This is the most exciting thing. And he said the thrill of being involved with early stage companies where you can enable them to be successful, and then they can go on and change the world. There's no other, and I'm sure people in the room have this feeling. There's no other feeling like it. It's a real privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So that's how I got the bug.
You replicated what David did for you.
Exactly.
Also, so that's a nice story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Cambridge Angels. So just to explain a bit to the audience, we have, I think, a lot of people from Paris. Can you tell us a bit more about Cambridge Angels? How does it work? Why they are together? And this kind of
sure.
things.
I mean, the Cambridge Angels started really through David Cleaveley and a chap called Herman Hauser, who started a company called Acorn that then became ARM Computers. And they basically just wanted to do a sort of investment club and an excuse to go to the colleges, have a nice meal, and have loads of nice wine. So this club just started from there, and then it just gradually grew and grew and grew, and we attracted more and more people. And the people that were coming in were all like-minded individuals. They were all successful business people who started their own business. They're all entrepreneurial. They all wanted to help companies get started, and also have great fun as well.
Yeah. And it's really an interesting and an important part of the ecosystem in Cambridge, if I understood. Like having Cambridge Angels in your capital is kind of an important step for the development of a startup in Cambridge.
That used to be the case. That certainly was, and to a certain extent it still is, but it's not so much now. So we've kind of moved above that, and also Cambridge Angels hasn't got a huge number of investments in the life sciences. It's got some.
Okay.
So it's not everything is controlled by the Cambridge
Angels. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so let's focus a bit on the Cambridge ecosystem. I think something that we link to Cambridge is academic excellence, like this very high standing research. And in your opinion, what makes Cambridge a good environment for PhD or postdoc to move to entrepreneurial career and found their company? Like, what's the key things that are here, the key elements that are in Cambridge and maybe not somewhere else?
I honestly think that a hub like Cambridge, it grows on success, and what had happened is that a number of academics had spun out companies from the university. So people like Greg Winter, who recently got the Nobel Prize for antibody engineering, he started a company called Cambridge Antibody Technology, and others in the university, academics spun out companies. And I think all of the academics now look at that and say, hey, I can do this. Yeah. And so that feeds on itself. And then you get more and more spin-outs coming out of the university.
Yeah, it's inspiring for young people to do the same.
Exactly, inspiring, yeah.
And what about, tech transfer offices in the university? Do you think also they are helping or they're active in this regard to spin out innovation?
Tech transfer is a really important point because if you get tech transfer wrong, you can actually suppress innovation. Yeah. And Cambridge has gone through a number of having Cambridge Enterprise and which helps to spin out companies, and then different models of how much investment they will take in return for the intellectual property that was generated within the university. And I think they've probably got it about right now, because you want a very light, the most important thing of all for universities is to have a very light touch on tech transfer, not to get so heavy that it just puts the entrepreneurs off and they can't build the company.
I think it's a similarity with ecosystems like Boston and maybe the San Francisco Bay Area, where universities are aware of this, but not being too intrusive.
And I do think that Cambridge learnt its lesson from the US, from Boston and the Bay Area, definitely. Yeah.
That's interesting. So on the VC, you mentioned Cambridge angels being less and less important in the ecosystem. Is it because they are being replaced by other kind of investors like venture capital, or is there a new way for startups to grow in Cambridge?
Oh, I didn't mean to say that Cambridge Angels is not important. Then they're still.
I didn't say. I didn't.
But there's a lot of tech investors and not healthcare investors. So in the healthcare, there's more and more deals being done outside of Cambridge Angels. Is what I meant to say.
All right.
Yeah.
And so, what about VCs in Cambridge? What do you think of their place in the ecosystem? Is it something that is fostering innovation, or are you lacking funds? What do you see in Cambridge?
Well, I mean, I think the VCs are, I don't know people's experience in the audience, but certainly they're hugely important because basically the industry that we're in, especially in drug discovery, you need a lot of money. And that money is out of the range of normal angel investors, and you find it very difficult to be able to follow on. And that is really again, this may ring true with a number of you in the audience, but one of the problems that I encountered in my early career in angel investing is that I'd get the businesses off the ground, put the money in, the businesses would then require further funding. Angel investors typically haven't got enough money to follow on the big rounds, which are requiring 1, 2, 3, 5 million, 10 million even, to actually fill that round. And at that point, the angel investors get wiped out, and they don't get anything. The VCs come in, they clean up and make their return, and the angels get wiped out. And that's been a problem all the way along and that is the biggest danger of angel investing, especially in healthcare.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's important. Something you would change about Cambridge? Okay, you just named this issue. Is there anything else you would change in Cambridge to make it better?
It's a very good question. I mean, one of the things that if I had a magic wand, I would sort of have 10 people like me, that are able to bridge that gap between the early startup companies and the VC round, the Series A, the Series B, the Series C, and there's still too few investors which can bridge that gap. So where I would bridge a gap is I would be sort of probably you'd call me a super angel, in that I've learnt my lesson in that when I get involved with a company in early stage, I'll be able to seed it, and then I'll reserve enough money to be able to follow on and not get wiped out in the Series A and the Series B round. And I just wish that there were more. If I could wave a magic wand, I would have more of those people. And then you could actually see companies going through successfully to get their Series A, Series B, Series C. Because too many companies, good companies, get into that valley of death where they've raised the angel funding and then they can't find the VC funding for the Series A. And they may fall in between that spot where, the investment is maybe like $500,000 for the angel funding. And then sweet spot for VCs is 5-10 million, and they might require 2 million. Yeah. And I've seen so many companies that end up in that sort of valley of death, if you like. Yeah. And if there were more people like me, we could bridge that valley of death. So that's what I would change.
Okay. And in Cambridge Angels, there are not more people like you?
Well, as I say, most of the Cambridge Angels are in tech, not in healthcare.
Yeah.
I think there's only 4.
Oh, okay, all right.
4 in healthcare out of 50, so
Okay.
it's
not so.
I'm a sort of minority.
All right.
So that's another thing I would change. I would have many more investors in this space.
Yeah, because usually Cambridge, we associate Cambridge with biology and life science quite a lot.
But it's
I think.
huge in other areas.
Yeah,
It's huge in Internet of Things, in Wi-Fi, in clean energy, silicon chips, ARM, semiconductors. There's loads more industry. It's not just healthcare. Yeah.
So we have to say a few words about Brexit. Sorry. So what do you think of Brexit in terms of impact on the innovation and on the biotech ecosystem?
Well, first thing is, I mean, obviously, I voted Remain, and then, like everybody, was a bit shocked when the Leave vote just got it, and then I thought, okay, that's the way it is. We can work with that. And I was invited to give a talk down in the city to various investors and fund managers and what have you. And I said, the problem is that we have, the UK is a net recipient of funds for life sciences. And the UK really punches above its weight in life sciences, in healthcare, in research tools. And we do that because we're good at life sciences, and we attract really good people, and we attract funding. And I said the thing that we need to guard now, if we're going to go down this route, is that there's going to be a gap, because we're going to lose people. People will drift back, to the mainland, mainland Europe, and we're going to lose funding. And I said the most important thing that government can do is to make sure that we don't do that. The good news on the people front is that I think 1 million people now have signed, the Europeans that are living in the UK, or it's close to 1 million anyway, have signed to say they're going to stay on, and that's all fine, so they can stay on, no problem. How it's going to work with people coming from Europe who will take a job in the future, I don't know. But since then, it's all become a bit of a mess. So I don't know what the government are going to do on funding. I'm pretty confident that I think we've got the people okay. We've lost. I know we've lost a few people, but not everybody. And
some fundings.
It was funny because in my talk, I did a picture of all of my companies. At that point, and there were like 25. Yeah. And I said, right, here's how many of the CEOs and founders of these companies are from the UK? And it was like 3. And the majority were from Germany, France, Portugal, Spain, Greece, and that's because we were good at attracting people from Europe. Yeah. So I was really worried about it. I'm still worried.
Let's hope there is a good outcome, and it's not impacting too much the ecosystem. Could be harmful for the ecosystem.
Well, I mean, I think it can be, yeah. But at the moment, we haven't seen a huge impact on it.
All right.
So it's still a great environment, a great place to be. But I think if government take their eye off the ball and they do this badly, it will impact, for sure. Yeah. No doubt about that.
All right. I will give you the chance to ask some questions. Is there anyone who wants to ask something?
I was wondering if the entrepreneur who helped you initially was coming from the healthcare industry.
No, he wasn't. He was actually from the telecoms industry. So he ran, at that point, Europe's biggest life science telecoms consultancy. but he is interested in biology. And he was mainly interested in biology because, as I say, he failed his biology O-level, and I think he wanted to prove to the world that he could do biology, and he was absolutely amazing. So, you know, my advice to anybody here is, if you can find, you know, network and get a mentor, because they can make all the difference. If you, because they've been through it, they've done it, and taking someone like myself, who is pure academic, you know, through all of those things that you have to learn to be a business person, to be an entrepreneur, that's hard. And it's so much easier if you've got somebody to teach you how to do it.
We had another question.
I was going to ask you a question. First of all, thanks for the talk. This is really about business models. Everybody and their mother or father has an opinion about business models. So I was curious, based on your extensive experience, how much do you really feel that a business model can be engineered, all these design processes and so on and so forth, and how much do you think it's really just either a eureka moment or just being in the right place at the right time?
My experience, and with Abcam and with many other businesses, is that the best ones will adapt their business model. So you have to, of course, you have to have a plan. You have to have a business model. You know, it's like going somewhere without a map. You need that. But you don't really know what you're going to discover, and that map is only partially complete. And it's the same with any business plan. And for sure, whatever business plan you've got, the actual reality of the business is going to be quite different. And I think a good thing that, or a good piece of advice would be to test your business plan, go out and see if it's working, adapt it, come back, see if, and then retest, adapt again, retest, and that way, what you do is you're actually matching your business to what the market actually needs. So if you think about it, you've got this incredible opportunity out there somewhere, which you've gone, whoa, there's an opportunity out there in selling antibodies online. Great. And then you've got to match that with building the company, and then you've got to all the time stress test that against what you're doing. So you keep iterating and going backwards and forwards and making sure that your business model actually fits. And in fact, I'll give you a great example of that. So in the early days of Abcam, David and I said, so David said, well, you know, where's these antibodies that you're going to sell? I said, I haven't made any. You know, they make a long time, and he said, and I can't find any, and we're not selling any antibodies. So he said, right, what we're going to do, we're going to run a business-to-business website, and we're going to put the life science researchers in touch with all the antibody companies, most of which went online or didn't have any online presence or anything like that, and we'll take the orders through that. So it'll be a business-to-business company. And I sort of had my doubts about that, but I thought, you know, let's test that out. So we actually ran two business models in parallel for 6 months. One was the business-to-business one, and one was we started to produce our own antibodies and sell them through the website. And then we looked at this and we go, wow, you know, like 6 months later, like we'd got 5% of our revenues were coming from the business-to-business. It was going nowhere. The antibodies were starting to take off. We knew that that was the right way to go. So that's the business model we then homed in on. So I hope that gives you... Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
You had a lean approach already at this time, which is what
Eric
startups are.
Rees. This was before Eric Rees' lean startup. Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. Do we have more questions? One in the back?
Yes. Hi, Jonathan. Were you interested or tempted to sell the business before you took it public? Was there any temptation along the way?
The answer is no. in fact, one of the things that I think, as an entrepreneur myself, I was really interested in building the biggest, best business that I could possibly do. And we had offers along the way. And I always resisted and resisted and resisted. Because I always thought there's more in this business, there's more in this business, there's more in this business, still do to this day. And I'm so glad that we did that. And in fact, you know, one of the things that Cambridge has suffered from, I think, is it sold its businesses too early. So Cambridge Biotechnology was sold too early. Solexa, which is the technology behind Illumina sequencing, that's all Cambridge-based technology. That company got sold too early. And I'm just really proud of the fact that Abcam is still an independent company, and we haven't sold out, as AstraZeneca is, because obviously AstraZeneca got the bid from Pfizer and managed to push that one away, which is great, because AstraZeneca are now headquartered in Cambridge. So I think my personal thing on this is just to build the best business that you can and take it as far as you can. Sometimes when you've taken it far enough, then there is a moment where you say, sell. But I certainly haven't reached that yet with Abcam.
Another question?
Just follow up on the gentleman's question. So you didn't sell the business, you listed it. And so I'm interested in how you perceive the potential change in the vision from investors in the US, obviously very important for our industry, vis-a-vis science coming from Europe. And you know, it feels like over the last 10 years, we got from science from Europe can't be good to actually a lot of European biotechs listing in the US. So I don't know if you share that point of view, if you can explain to us from your perspective what has maybe driven that.
Yeah, I mean, I think more and more biotech companies now, their preference is to go US. And I don't know if that's the case here. I think it is. I think it is. And I think we're seeing the same thing in the UK now. There's less appetite to go onto the main market or onto the AIM market, which is where we took Abcam in 2005. So really the motivation for taking Abcam onto the AIM market at that point was to actually raise some finance to invest in some manufacturing equipment. Actually, it worked out really, really well, despite the fact that actually we probably didn't need that investment and we could have kept the company private. I'm glad that we did. It brought discipline to the company, and yeah, the company has thrived being on the AIM market. So I can't complain about that at all.
One last question. Actually, I have one. I have seen in some of your investments, it seems that you're also interested a lot in AI and biology, like Repositive and Helix. They have this AI component. Do you see this new field of science and digital really like as the future of life science?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that I'm a huge fan of AI. The one thing I'm not is a computer programmer, so don't ask me about algorithms or anything like that. I just see the power of what it can do. And one of my companies, a company called Helix, which we started about 4 years ago, and it's just raised over $40 million and doing really well. And it uses AI to interrogate a knowledge database of a drugs database and a disease target database as well. And we believe we've got the best AI in the world for doing that. And we're aiming to get 100 programs towards the clinic by 2025, which is incredible. I mean, this is why it's such an exciting time to be in this space, because for years and years, you know, drug discovery, as everybody here knows, it's too long, it's too expensive, and there's too many failures. And anything you can do to make it faster, cheaper, more predictive has got to be a good thing. And AI, I think, is the future of being able to do that.
Yeah, in drug development, you believe it can help.
I truly believe that. Yeah.
I agree. What do you think of Paris? It's my closing question, so it's great. Opening question.
Is that a trick question? I think everybody loves Paris, don't they? I don't think I've ever met anybody ever that says, I don't like Paris. I love Paris.
And biotechs in Paris, you know anything about it?
I don't know much about biotechs in Paris, apart from what you've introduced to me, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you. Right. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It was great to have you here.
It's a pleasure. Yeah.
Jonathan will be with us in the networking session, so if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to him. Thanks a lot.